Welcome. Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we are diving into something super interesting, the moral and philosophical approach in literature. Yeah, it sounds heavy, but trust me, it's way cooler than it sounds. So, grab your brain, your curiosity, and let's break this down together. Before we enter the discussion, do you know, guys, what is moral and philosophical approach?
I don't know, bro.
Yeah, moral and philosophical approach is sharing life lesson about good and bad. The critic using this approach focuses on identifying and explaining what the text teaches. Guerin 2005. Before we make any moral rules, we need to understand people first. What they intend, what they act, and the reasons behind their choices. Anscombe, 1958. There are two other explanations that we use. The first is article and the second is website. The article that we use written by Helen Ukpupu. In her articles, she elaborates that the moral approach is a way of analyzing literary works by judging how far they teach moral values, improve human character, and provide lessons about good and bad action. Meanwhile, the philosophical approach is the analysis of the literary works through the concept of ethic, truth, and human nature. This considers the ideas and underlies in the text and how the works reflect the author's views of life. In her article aimed at moral criticism is rooted in the traditional thoughts such as Plato, Aristotle, Thomas More, Hobbes, and Samuel Johnson. They believe that literature is a tool for moral education and improve social and personal quality. She also compares with the other approaches that emphasize psychological, structural, or even linguistic aspects. The second explanation is website. A website that we use is from Fifable. In the Fifable website, a philosophical approach is a way in which humans try to understand the world through thought and questioning. For example, why does something happen? What is truth? How do we know something is true? Between 1815 and 1914 in Europe, people began to believe that in order to know something, we must observe, experiment, and use logic just like in science. Meanwhile, the moral approach is the way humans try to determine what is good and what is bad. This helps people decide how to act so as not to harm others. Many figures of that era created new rules or ways of thinking about goodness, justice, and human behavior, such as equality, honesty, and treating others fairly. So simply, philosophical approach is a way of understanding the world through thinking and seeking reason. And moral approach is a way of determining good and bad deeds. So, in our opinion, the moral and philosophical approach sees literature as a tool for sharing life's lesson, moral insight, and understanding about human nature. It is assumed that all literary works have moral and philosophical meanings that can teach, warn, and encourage readers in understanding good and bad behavior, regardless of the form of its literature. Based on the traditions of expertise such as Plato, Horace, English neoclassicists, and later critics, this approach prioritizes the work's values, worldviews, and ethical messages over its artistic or structural component. However, its weaknesses are considered being way too traditional, very common sense, and less attention to psychological, structural, or linguistic challenges.
Alright, next we are talking about how the concept of moral philosophy has changed from Plato to the early modern critics. Firstly, it is rooted in Plato, Aristotle, and the theologians. In the ancient period, Plato saw morality as a search for the good, or the highest truth of life. It is like sunlight helps you see the world clearly. The good view in here helps people see what truly matters in life, while Aristotle focused on virtue, or a good character is shaped by good habits. He thinks that morality is like training a muscle. You strengthen good character by doing good actions repeatedly. And later on, in the medieval theologians, when Christianity influenced, they connected morality to God's law. It means that moral rules come from divine command. Here, morality is like following road signs made by God. If you ignore them, you endanger yourself and others, or you might end up in hell or consequences. In this view, literature is didactic, meaning it teaches and guides, and it must follow God's law. Then the early modern critics changed everything. It is started by critics such as Thomas Hobbes. For him, morality was a social rule that it is an agreement for each other to live safely together. Like imagine everyone in a room agrees not to hit each other, so they can live peacefully. This agreement for him is morality. While for David Hume, morality comes from psychological feelings, especially sympathy. We call something good because we feel it is good, and the other way for bad things. It is like when you see someone help a stranger and feel warm inside, that feeling is the reason why you call the act is good. And for Immanuel Kant, morality is a universal, rational law. It is a rule created by reason that should apply to everyone. So no matter who they are, because everything we do always has a reason, right? So before you do something, ask yourself, would it be okay if everyone did this? If it is not, then the action is immoral. However, this approach itself has weaknesses too. The biggest caution is overinterpretation. It is reading morality too aggressively and overstating lessons that are not there or written in the text. It is like saying that all the tragedy in Shakespeare must be read as a moral lesson, when even Shakespeare himself did not always intend them that way. Therefore, using moral interpretation is okay, but do not expect every text to be a moral lesson, and do not force morality onto the text. After that, there will be how we use this approach in a work. Here we have chosen Mary Shelley's novel Frankenstein. Approach application Victor creates life not from ethical reflection, but from the technical ability to do so, showing ambition without ethical clarity. This shows that the true moral problem is not from the monster itself, but Victor's lack of a moral compass. In Frankenstein, it shows that Victor creates life not from ethics, but from technical ability, meaning he acts just because he can. He lacks ethical clarity or a clear sense of right and wrong, and he loses his moral compass, meaning he can no longer judge his own actions. He is portrayed as a modern scientist who is continuously experimenting because technological advances he had, and ignoring his responsibility towards his creations or the monster itself. Therefore, the novel becomes a warning that scientific power without moral responsibility can lead the creator to become such a sinner. Therefore, from us, and there are also references for you to get more detail of the explanation. Thank you for your time and attention today.